to do is, as I'm talking about the other stuff, I'm just going to go over the bottom here really quickly. So as we move forward, I'm just going to be making some more detailed lines along the bunny. I'm gonna probably go over some of the lines that I've already done on the face. And I'm going to be doing some of the foliage around the bunny's rear end. So now I'm just going through and making it my first layer of the green along the bottom. I will go through at the end and do one more coat of green, this mint green, along the top here where we've already gone, just so that I can get full coverage, and I will go again along the bottom before doing the foliage. Okay, so now that we've gotten that, I'm ready to figure out what it is today that we're going to be working on. Okay, so I did the first layer of that pink on the ear, but since I want it to more closely resemble the deer, I'm going to go ahead and do another coat of pink on that now, so that the rabbit and the deer are more closely unified. And now of course that I've wet this base of the canvas, I'm wanting to avoid that. And typically right around here on my arm is where I get the most paint. So you can see sometimes I don't make the best choices as to when to go to paint something that has not quite dried. But use your best judgment. I know there are others in this world that have a little bit better judgment than myself. So as I was looking at these two together, this bunny and the deer, I was realizing that the deer's ears were really solidly this rose color. Oops, I just did a little bit out farther than I wanted to there, but that's okay. All right, so now that that's basically filled in, I'm going to take another look at my reference photo and compare the reference photo to the image on my painting and go about working on the detail. So I'm going to take my raw sienna and apply that to my palette, and my fine brush here. So it's super fine. It's got a sharp enough point to it that it will be good for doing fine little hairs on the bunny. And that is why we had done the background, the first layer of background, so that if we get any fur that kind of sticks up outside of it, that we've got good coverage. Okay, so I'm just going to take this raw sienna and go in the areas that are darkest, and I'm just going to make fine little lines, like not quite individual, not as fine to be individual hairs because it's not that small of a brush, but small enough to kind of indicate that there is a variance of color there. Okay, and then this portion of the ear is darker because it's hiding from our source of light. So I'm going to go ahead and go through and make this darker. And also darken this area along this ear. If your painting is still wet, as mine sort of is, it's a little bit tacky, you can either go ahead and keep painting as I am, or you can wait for it to dry, or you can turn your painting around and work at it. If you turn your painting around and you turn your reference photo around, sometimes seeing it from a different angle will help you notice things that you have not been able to notice before previously. Similarly to, I am noticing that this portion is not really well defined as being that front leg. So I'm going to go through here and make this a little bit darker down in here. And also I'm going to cover in some of these white areas. Anything that you see in this video now is going to be a lot of me kind of filling in these blanks, these white areas that are still showing through on my canvas. So I don't want there to be any white little valleys going on here. So I'm going to color a lot of it in. And also work on some of this fur, make it look more furry. Got some white area up here. I'm gonna switch it back. So now I'm really liking it even as it is, but I'm going to continue working on the details. So around this nose, it's kind of darker above the nose. Right there. Okay, and here there's a little bit of a line here. I'm just going to put that line directly from the nose to the point of this, where the eye is. And around here is a little darker. I'm noticing that my eye, where I have my eye, is a little bit too narrow. So as I did before with the indigo, I'm just taking a little dab from the top, and I'm going to go ahead and make it more pronounced. They have big, kind of dewy looking eyes. They're really good at that cute eye pout thing too, that puppies do. In cartoons. Okay, so there's that. I'm gonna go ahead and clean my brush off again because I've gone a little bit out of order, but it's not too bad. Just clean it off a little bit on my palette and then on my rag. I'm not even going to dip it in any water. I just clean it off. And then I'm going to go back through again with my sand in the areas that were really light. And go through there. I'm just looking at my reference photo and noticing that there's a little bit of white around the nose as well. So where I just painted, I'll go ahead and paint over that. And then I'm going to color in this little area around the mouth too. And I'm going to connect that to the neck. So these two colors are a little bit too close for comfort as far as being of the same or similar value. So I'm going to try to lighten that up a little bit right there. You don't want your background to be too closely matched to your subject, because then it kind of washes it out. You want to have a good range of light, medium, and darker tones. And now I'm taking my sand, and since I already had it on the brush, I'm just going over some parts that were already that color, filling them in, and then I'm going to go through and do some more detail on the hind leg and the back, along the back. So the fur kind of goes in a few different directions, but you want to follow the basic line. So it, as you know, if you've pet any kind of dog or cat, the fur kind of goes along the back. But this leg here, because it starts down here and it kind of curves around that way, and then the bottom of that foot would be along here. But since we can't see that, it's not visible, it doesn't matter. But the fur is going to, the strokes of the fur are going to kind of go along this invisible path. So I'm just going to go ahead and include little pieces of fur wherever I see that there's light on the reference photo. So again, over here on this other leg, and I'm going to go ahead and take it, even though it's really kind of similar color to that Naples yellow. I'm going to take it a little bit more over there and lighten that up a little bit. Now I'm going to take, I have a little bit of this raw sienna on my palette already. I'm going to take my Naples yellow and mix the two up with my fine brush. If you have a palette knife or a larger brush, you can use that to mix it as well. And then I'm twisting all the excess paint off of the brush so that I can get a fine line. And I've created kind of a flatness to the brush so that I can get fur, the effect of fur. And it's a little bit lighter than I wanted to go, but I like to have a variety. So I'm gonna use what's on my brush now, and then maybe I'll add a little bit more raw sienna as well. Yeah, because as you know, if you've been looking at this reference photo as much as I have, there is not just one or two colors of this rabbit. There's a lot of variance going on there. And I'm going to go along the tail as well. I have some white area around the outside of this tail. And then this neck, I want to make sure that there is a fair amount of definition so that it does not look like that neck had disappeared into the background. It's really starting to look like a rabbit. It was looking like a rabbit before, but now it really is starting to look like a rabbit. It's getting closer and closer to completion, and you can see it, see the light. So once again, I'm just going through anywhere that I saw any white areas. This line that I had previously painted sand, I'm gonna go through and get that out. And then I'm gonna do a little bit of variance through here. You can change your mind too. If something's not working, feel free to go back and fix it. I just went through that area that I painted sand just now, and I just went over it with my new color, which is kind of an even blend of raw sienna and Naples yellow. And get a little bit more going on here. And then I'm gonna call it, I think. Let me take one more look at my reference photo. Maybe I'll do one more go over with my raw sienna to get some shadows. And then I'm gonna start drawing my foliage. This looks like there's a little line in here. And then that a little darker. Alrighty. So now I'm just going to, I think before I do my foliage, I'm going to do a speedy level or another speed round of this mint color. I'm just going to put it directly on the canvas, and then I'm going to do my second coat on the background. Okay, now that the bunny is dry, I'm going to go ahead and add the foliage, the grass, the similar flowers, and they're going to really be cohesive, so I'm going to have it be pretty identical as far as what's going on down here is going to be going on down here. And as with the deer, I'm going to encourage you to find ways to make it your own. So if you have a different, if you want to go in a totally different direction, feel free. If you want to incorporate whatever it is that you made that took to make your deer individualized, to make that kind of more unified, please feel free to do that as well. So I'm just adding my olive green grass, and I'm going to really try to get over the bottom of this deer so that it is covered with grass, so you don't feel like you have to look for the details within the grass, underneath the grass. What's going on in this leg? What's going on with the foot? It's covered with the grass, don't worry about it. It's a good cheater way to get around the actual anatomy of the entire animal. This is what I used to do a lot of early on, is I would put hands in pockets so that I didn't have to paint the hands. I'd put shoes, off the page so I didn't have to draw the shoes. The angle of the foot might be a little funny, so I would try to hide things as best as I can. And if you feel confident in making the actual feet, please feel free to do so. I don't want to take your creative spark, but in terms of this class, that reference photo did not really show much of where those things were, so I'm not going to worry about it. It also didn't have a tail, the reference photo, and we've made a tail here, which I'm going to go ahead and make more rounded. Okay. If you're anything like me, in this class, in any online class that I've done, any class that I've done, period, in person as well, I always want to, and I have to fight the urge to do so, to make noises as I make my strokes. And I've noticed that when painting with my son, he's almost 4, he does the same thing. He goes, doo, 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 doo. It adds another layer of fun to it. But like I said, I try to fight back the urge to do so almost constantly. Because when I'm painting by myself, I do a lot of that. It helps make the strokes happen. They want to be heard. So I'm just gonna fill in about the same amount as I did with the deer. Do one more like little layer down here. use your best judgment. If something doesn't look right, you can go over it again with your background color. And then remember, as always, to sign your pieces. I'm going to go ahead and work on my flowers. I'm going to do the same flowers. I'm going to make them about the same size, even though the scale of this is different. So this deer is obviously going to be much larger than this rabbit. So I'm going to make them a little bit larger on the painting of the rabbit, even though they're much larger than they would be if they were the exact same flowers as the deer. So playing with scale is fun. If you have a really small thing, usually that you know is small, like a rabbit, what you can do is put something that would ordinarily be very large, like a building or a tree in there, and just toying around with scale and subject makes it really playful. And I could have done the flower the same size as with the deer, and it would make the deer look like it was even larger. Because if you look at the two pieces together, I'm going to go ahead and switch my brush to a larger brush. It's going to take too long for me to use that small brush. So if I were to have made the flower the same size, because our brains are working without our knowledge, our brain would have said, that bunny is huge. But in reality, well, I mean, it may be huge, or it may just be closer. But because if you have them lined up at the same height, right next to each other, it looks so much bigger than the deer. This is my earth green I'm making this plant with, and just painting the leaves. I may need a little bit more detail. Get in those fine valleys. But for now, I'm just going to do a rough of where things lay. Okay, and then I'm gonna go ahead and move on. I'm just gonna do one leaf on this one. I may end up doing more eventually, but just to give you an idea of what it's going to look like, I'm gonna go ahead and move on. And there's my sun. Ding dong. All right, I hope you've enjoyed making your bunny. I hope to see all of your paintings in our Facebook group. Hope you're all safe and happy and healthy. And I will all right, awesome. I hope you have enjoyed, and I look forward to seeing your finished products. Much love.